There's a quiet belief that sits underneath the skin of almost every leader I meet in hospitality. It isn't something we put in our mission statements. It isn't something that we tell our teams to do. In fact, if we saw our teams doing it, we'd probably tell them to stop. But we live by it. It sounds something like this. As long as the doors are open, the guests are happy, the bills are paid, and the team are safe, I will be fine. I can deal with my own needs later. I can sleep when it's all done. You might not say that out loud, but you act like it every single day. The rota gets done, the stock gets ordered, the events go ahead, the complaints are handled, everyone else's needs are met with precision and care. And then when everything finally stops, you're lying in bed at 1 a.m, staring at the ceiling, completely wired, wondering why you can't switch off. You're wondering why, despite being exhausted in your bones, your brain will not let you rest. Over the past 5 or 6 years, while climbing out of the dark hole that I found myself in, I have had a lot of realizations about leadership, pressure, and what it actually does to us from the inside out. Many of those realizations have made their way into my Leadwell framework, into my work with clients, and into the videos that I put on this channel. But if I had to boil it down to just one key feature, one thing that I would beg you to take away from anything I create, anything you hear me say, or any consultancy session that we have had, it would be this. You have to look after yourself. You have to work on the system that protects you before it protects anything else. Not as an afterthought, not when things calm down, but as the foundation of the business itself. This includes the boundaries you create with work, the amount you drink, and the delegation that you make to ensure that you're not overloaded. But the foundation of it all, the thing that makes or breaks your goals, your journey, and honestly your happiness, is how well that you sleep. Welcome to the Leadwell channel, where we explore the inner world of leadership, well-being, and what it means to build a business that doesn't break you. My name's Trevor. I've run a multi-award-winning restaurant and cocktail bar called Occo Rocco, and I work with hospitality leaders who are carrying serious responsibility. When I opened Occo Rocco, I did not come from a hospitality background. I learned it all in real time, hiring teams, creating systems from scratch, managing finances, building a brand, running events, holding the culture together. I did what a lot of you have done. I absorbed pressure silently, and I mistook endurance for strength. I thought being the last one to leave and the first one back in was what leadership looked like. I believed that being needed meant I was doing something right. On paper, the business was doing well. From the outside, things looked exciting, successful, and full of energy. But on the inside, I was running on fumes. My sleep was one of the first things to go, but I didn't see it as a problem. I saw it as the price of admission. At my darkest time, my sleep was terrible. I was not just a bit tired, I was broken. I would lay there for hours before I could get to sleep. My mind would spin through every worst case scenario, every conversation I've had with the staff that day, every bill that was coming up, every review. Then I'd finally drop off, only to wake up multiple times in the night and drag myself out of bed just a few hours later to go back in and do it all again. I was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. I was not looking after myself at all. I was going to bed at sporadic times, partly because of what I was taking, but also because I did not want to be alone with my own head on the pillow. Every time my head hit the pillow, the existential crisis kicked off, so I just delayed it. Stay out later, watch one more thing, have one more drink, answer one more email. I told myself the same story a lot of entrepreneurs tell themselves. If I sleep less, I'll get more done. The business needs me, I'll rest when things calm down. Except they didn't calm down, and the less I slept, the less I could actually see straight. There was one panic attack in particular that snapped something in me. I was in the car with my wife, I was driving, and I could feel my chest tightening, my vision narrowing, my whole system screaming that it could not keep going like this. And still, my first thought was, how am I going to get the rota done for tomorrow? That was the moment I realized something very simple but very confronting. I was treating myself as if I was the least important asset in my own business, and that had to change. Before we go deeper into this, I want to offer you something that might help you see where you're at right now. I put together a business and wellness quiz for leaders in hospitality. It's not a pass or fail test. It's not there to tell you if you're doing badly or if you're not enough. It's just a clarity tool. It shows you how the demand on your business and your personal capacity are interacting beneath the surface. It reveals where the load is sitting and where the cracks are starting to appear before they turn into full-on breaks. If you're listening to this and recognizing yourself in what I'm describing, if you feel that gap between how the business looks and how you feel, I would really encourage you to take it, not to judge yourself, but to see yourself more clearly. You'll find the link in the description below. I want to talk about sleep in a way that you might not be used to. This is not a well-being talk in the traditional sense. I'm not here to tell you to have a bubble bath and switch your phone off and everything will be fine. In hospitality, we're very good at running on empty. We have normalized overload, long hours, split shifts, late nights, constant decision making, the pressure of reviews, the financial squeeze. The problem is when you're the only one holding the responsibility, your system becomes part of the business infrastructure. Your nervous system, your ability to think clearly, your ability to regulate your emotions and make clean decisions, that is all infrastructure. And sleep is the maintenance schedule for that infrastructure. When we talk about the Leadwell framework, we start with look inward. For me, looking inward meant seeing the stories I was telling myself about what made me a good leader. One of those stories was exactly this. If I can handle more pressure than everyone else, it means I'm strong. If I can cope on less sleep, it means I'm committed. If I am exhausted, it proves that I care. That story was running me. It kept me saying yes when I needed to say no. It kept me on the floor fixing tiny problems at midnight because I can't bear the idea of not being needed. My identity was deeply attached to being the one who could handle it. Looking inward meant I had to ask some harder questions. What am I proving here? Who am I trying to impress? Why does being the most exhausted person in the building feel like a badge of honor? The second part of the Leadwell framework is establish rhythm. In hospitality, rhythm gets hijacked by the rota and the bookings. The business has a rhythm, the service times, deliveries, the cleaning, the prep, the close. But most leaders I speak to have not got a rhythm for themselves. They live in reaction. They absorb everyone else's chaos and then wonder why they can't sleep. Sleep is one of the purest reflections of your rhythm. If your days are a constant mix of adrenaline, caffeine, alcohol, firefighting, a mental load, your body does not suddenly flip into deep recovery just because you've turned the light off. It takes that energy into the night with you. The third part of the framework is align your energy. And this is really about understanding the relationship between stress, burnout, and your nervous system and your capacity. Sleep sits right in the middle of all of that. We often talk about sleep as if it's a luxury, something that you can cut back on when you're busy and catch up on later. But anyone who has been through prolonged burnout will tell you, you don't catch up as easily as you think. I used to believe that because I could survive on 4 hours sleep in my 20s, I could keep that going in my 30s while running a restaurant, employing teams, and holding down a mortgage. The reality is the context has changed, the stakes have changed, the strain has changed. I see this a lot with owners and senior managers. You get to the end of a 14-hour day and you convince yourself that answering those last 3 emails at midnight is efficient, that getting that final bit of paperwork done before bed is you being proactive. What actually happens is that you wire your brain up even more. You finally crash at 1 or 2 in the morning, your sleep is shallow and broken, and then you wake up and trying to make decisions with a brain that is basically running on low battery mode. We know this from research now. Lack of sleep, and certainly low quality sleep, genuinely impairs your ability to make good decisions. It reduces your capacity to detect what and where you should be spending your time. So you become more reactive, you firefight, you feel more behind, which fuels more anxiety, which makes it even harder to sleep. That is how people end up in survival mode for years. And the last part of my Leadwell framework is direct with clarity. You can't direct with clarity if you are permanently underslept. You might be able to hold it together on the surface. You might be polite with guests, friendly with staff, charming with investors, but underneath your margin is tiny. It takes one problem table, one staff member calling in sick, one unexpected bill, and suddenly you're snapping at people that you care about. You're making decisions from fear and you're completely withdrawn. Sleep is not just about not feeling tired at work. It's about whether you have enough bandwidth to lead without emotional volatility, whether you can set boundaries without guilt, whether you can delegate without micromanaging, whether your team are walking on eggshells around your mood, and all of that is connected to how rested your system is. What has been interesting to watch over the past few years is how the public conversation around success has started to shift. When I was first building Okaroko, the loudest voices in the business were all about the hustle. Grind now, rest later, sleep when you're dead. If you're not pushing yourself to the edge, you're seen as soft. Now, if you listen to a lot of people who have sustained success over time, they're not bragging about their all-nighters anymore. They're bragging about getting their full 8 hours. They're bragging about protecting their mornings, about taking time away from their business to think. They've realized that the thing that really moves the needle is not how many hours they log in, it's the quality of the decisions and their presence when they are actually there. And you can't shortcut that. You can't drink your way through it. You can't caffeinate your way through it forever. You can get away with it for a season. I did, many of you are. But if you zoom out and look at the 5 or 10 year window, the leaders who maintain their capacity, their relationships, and their sanity are the ones who have started treating sleep as non-negotiable. In a previous video, we went through how trade-offs are important in life to ensure that certain goals can be achieved. This goes for sleep and efficiency too. There is a trade-off between squeezing in one more task into the end of the day and protecting the quality of your brain for tomorrow. It looks like this. You're at your laptop at 11:30 at night and you tell yourself, I'll just finish the rota. I'll just pay that invoice. I'll just send that email to a supplier. Your eyes are burning, your brain is foggy, you make mistakes that you have to fix later, you go to bed wired, you get 5 or 6 hours of patchy sleep. You wake up groggy and short-tempered. The next day, the same rota that would have taken you 20 clear-headed minutes takes you an hour. You're less patient with staff, you miss details, you make decisions that you later regret. From the outside, it looks like you're working really hard. From the inside, you're burning a lot of energy just to go around in circles. By putting off that last task and getting to bed to get a good night's rest before picking it up again tomorrow with a much clearer head, you can be much more efficient. So let's bring this down to ground level. Sleep is affected by pretty much everything you do. It's affected by that glass of wine you had before bed, the stress you're carrying from work, the exercise you did that day, the time you go to sleep or wake up, the amount of water you drink, your diet, specifically how late you eat, your caffeine intake, and so much more. You know all this logically, but what shifted for me was not knowing more. It was slowly building a system that protects my sleep without me having to think about it every second. Here are some key things that I've done that have overwhelmingly helped with my sleep quality. The first big shift was alcohol. I have largely given it up. I still have a glass of wine a couple of times a year when the event seems right, but I don't drink regularly anymore. For a long time, I believed that drink was helping me to relax. It took the edge off my anxiety. It made it easier to sit down. It felt like a reward at the end of a day. What it was actually doing was numbing me enough to fall asleep, but destroying the quality of my sleep. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning with my heart racing, a dry mouth, brain spinning. It took me a while to link that directly to the few drinks I thought were harmless. Cutting that out, for the most part, had a huge impact on how deeply I slept and how anxious I felt the next day. The second shift was how I start my day. I realized that if the first thing I did when I woke up was reach for my phone, check messages, check bookings, check whatever fire that had appeared overnight, my nervous system was already on high alert before I even stood up. So I start the day with an hour of downtime to start the day on my own terms. I do some breath work and some meditation before I even look at my phone. I don't look at emails. I don't step back into the noise. That hour is not about being productive. It's about telling my system, you're safe. You don't have to be on alert yet. And it's amazing how much that first hour shapes the rest of the day and how over time it feeds into better sleep because I'm not spending 18 hours a day in fight or flight mode. The third shift was exercise. Again, not new information, but the way I related to it changed. I stopped seeing exercise as another thing I should be doing to optimize myself and started seeing it as a way of helping my body complete the stress cycle. When you're in service, your body is flooded with stress hormones. You're moving constantly, but often in a very stop-start way. Your brain is on edge, you're dealing with conflicts, complaints, last-minute changes, and then you go home and you try and be still. What regular exercise did for me was give my body somewhere to put that energy. It physically tired me out in a clean way. I slept better when my body has had a chance to move properly, not just a pace around the restaurant. The fourth shift for me was supplementing with magnesium glycinate. Now, I'm not here to give medical advice. This is just my experience. Magnesium glycinate was a game changer for me. Within 3 days of taking this supplement, my sleep improved and my anxiety dropped. The benefits were crazy. It wasn't magic. It didn't fix my life, but it gave my nervous system some support that I clearly needed after years of running it into the ground. If you're curious about that, speak to a professional, do your own research, but for me, it was one of the simplest, highest impact changes. The fifth shift was journaling, not in a petty Instagram, perfect notebook kind of way. Journaling for me is very functional. It's about getting the negative thoughts out of my head. I noticed a lot of my sleeplessness came from my brain turning over the negative possibilities. What if the business fails? What if I let everyone down? What if this month is the one where it all collapses? These thoughts were just looping round. By getting them out of my head, my brain can rest knowing that I've put them somewhere and I've looked at it. Sometimes I also write down the things that went well for that day, not in a forced gratitude kind of way, but as a counterweight, because when you're exhausted, your brain has a negativity bias. You only remember what went wrong. Journaling can widen that lens a little bit. If you're listening to this and seeing yourself in a version of me who lay awake at night, self-medicating, endlessly wired, I want you to hear this very clearly. You're not broken, you're just overloaded. There's a big difference. Overload is not a moral failing. It's not a lack of willpower. It is what happens when the structure of your life and the business is set up in a way that demands more from you than your system can sustainably give. Sleep is often where that overload shows up first, or at least most clearly. When you can't fall asleep, when you wake up at 3 a.m. with your chest tight, when your mind won't stop rehearsing conversations and scanning for problems, listing all the things that might go wrong. That is not your brain being dramatic, it's your system trying to cope with the weight that it's carrying. Changing how you sleep is not about becoming a perfect person who gets 8 hours every night and never looks at their phone after 9. It's about slowly adjusting the structure so that you're not constantly living in survival mode. For me, that's meant downsizing at times, saying no to opportunities that would have looked impressive but would have cost me my health, redefining what growth means. It has meant accepting that I'm not a machine, that just because I can push through for a while does not mean that I should. It has meant seeing my own value not in how much pressure I can absorb silently, but in how steadily I can lead when I'm resourced. When you start to look inward at the stories that you've been telling yourself about strength and sacrifice, when you begin to establish rhythm that supports your body as well as your business, when you align your energies so that you're not living in constant fight or flight, you give yourself a chance to direct with clarity instead of from reactivity. Sleep is woven through all of that. It's not a side note, it's not a nice to have, it's one of the main ways that you move from survival into conscious leadership. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like and a subscribe. It helps me, it helps the channel, and it helps people like us find the content that really matters. And thank you for bearing with me. I am very ill at the moment, and I'm sure my nose is very nasally. As always, I'd love to remind you that you matter too. Don't forget that.